Before we begin, share your own grandma stories in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep these memories alive together. They started calling me paranoid when I was 60-3. It began with small things. My daughter-in-law Brenda would tilt her head and speak slowly, like I was a child who'd forgotten how forks worked. My son Mitchell would exchange glances with his wife whenever I mentioned anything about the house or money. And my younger son, Derek, stopped calling altogether unless Brenda had prompted him. I'm 71 now, and I can tell you exactly when I realized what they were doing. It was a Tuesday in October, unseasonably warm, the kind of day that makes you forget winter is coming. I was sitting on my porch, the same porch my late husband Gerald and I built with our own hands in 1981 when I overheard Brenda on her phone in my driveway. She's getting worse, Brenda said, her voice carrying through the screen door. Yesterday she accused me of moving her pills. Mom, they were right where they always are. She's just, I don't know. We're worried she's not safe alone anymore. I sat very still, my coffee going cold in my hands. We've been looking into places, she continued. Nice ones, you know, with activities and nurses on staff. Mitchell thinks it's time. The house is just too much for her. The house is just too much for her. Not? Mom's struggling. Not. We want to help. The house was too much. The house I'd lived in for 43 years. The house that sat on 4 acres of what was now prime real estate, 20 minutes from downtown Portland. The house that had been appraised, just last year, at $1.3 million. I didn't confront her that day. I've learned that people reveal more when they think you're not paying attention. Instead, I started watching, listening, and what I found broke something in me that I didn't know could still break. Mitchell was my first baby. I was 22 when I had him. Young and terrified and so in love with Gerald I thought my heart would burst. Mitchell came out screaming, red-faced and angry at the world, and he was mine. Gerald worked double shifts at the mill so I could stay home those first years. We were poor in the way young families are poor, eating spaghetti 5 nights a week, mending socks, buying second-hand everything. But we were happy. Derek came 3 years later. Quieter, easier. He'd sleep through anything. Mitchell was the fighter. Derek was the peacemaker. They were so different, but they loved each other fiercely then. They'd build forts in the backyard, catch frogs in the creek, track mud through my kitchen while I pretended to be angry. I don't know exactly when Mitchell changed. Maybe it was gradual, so slow I didn't notice until it was done. He went to college first in our family and came back with different words, different ideas about what mattered. He married Brenda when he was 28. She was pretty and ambitious and I tried so hard to love her the way a mother should love her son's wife. But Brenda looked at our house the way you'd look at a thing that needed fixing. Derek married his college girlfriend, Simone, and they moved to Seattle for her job. They visited twice a year, always rushed, always apologetic. Derek would hug me tight and tell me he loved me, but I could feel him slipping away, bit by bit, into his own life. That's what children do. You raise them to leave. It's supposed to hurt less when it's working right. It doesn't. After Gerald died 6 years ago, the kids wanted me to sell the house immediately. It's too big for one person, Mitchell said at the funeral reception. Still in his black suit, eating deviled eggs someone from church had brought. You could get a condo, something manageable, easy. I told him I wasn't ready. The truth was, I'd never be ready. Gerald was in every corner of this place, the kitchen cabinets he'd installed when Mitchell was 10. The bedroom window he'd replaced after the ice storm of '92. The garden where he'd grown tomatoes every summer until the cancer made him too weak to kneel. I understand, Mitchell had said, but his jaw was tight. Brenda rubbed his back and said nothing, but I saw her eyes scanning the living room, probably calculating square footage. I stayed. I maintained the house myself, hired help when I needed it, kept the garden going because letting it die felt like letting Gerald die again. I was fine. I was capable. I was alone, yes, but not lonely in any way that mattered. Then the campaign started. It was subtle at first. Mitchell would visit and point out things that needed repair, a loose step, a dripping faucet, with this new tone of concern that felt less like helping and more like building a case. Mom, this is dangerous. He'd say, "What if you'd fallen?" "I didn't fall," I'd reply. "And I called Pete Sullivan to fix it." Pete Sullivan is 80 years old, so he knows what he's doing. Brenda started bringing over pamphlets, active senior communities, retirement living at its finest, places with names like Meadowbrook Estates and Sunset Gardens, as if calling them something pretty made them less like warehouses for the elderly. "Just look at them," she'd say, spreading glossy brochures across my kitchen table. "Some of your friends from church are at Meadowbrook. Donna Patterson says she loves it." Donna Patterson also had dementia and thought Ronald Reagan was still president. But I didn't say that. Derek called more during this period, which should have warmed me but instead felt orchestrated. He'd ask careful questions. Was I eating okay? Sleeping well? Did I remember to take my blood pressure medication? I'm not senile, I finally snapped during one call. "No one's saying that, Mom." His voice was gentle, patient, the voice you'd use with someone fragile. "We just want to make sure you're taken care of." "I'm taking care of myself just fine." There was a pause. Then, "Mitchell's really worried. He says you've been forgetting things." "What things?" "I don't know." "Things. Look, we love you. We just want you to be safe." Safe. That word again. As if safety was the only thing that mattered. As if a safe cage was better than a dangerous freedom. The doctor's appointment was Mitchell's idea. "Just a checkup," he said. "You haven't been in a while. We'll go together." I should have refused. But part of me, the part that still wanted to be a good mother, to not make waves, agreed. Dr. Harrison was young, maybe 40, with the kind of friendly professionalism that made you forget you were being evaluated. Mitchell came into the exam room with me, which should have been my first warning. The doctor asked routine questions. Then, "Mrs. Brennan, have you experienced any memory problems lately? Confusion? Forgetting where you put things? Losing track of time?" "No," I said. Mitchell cleared his throat. "Mom, what about last week, when you couldn't find your car keys?" "I found them. They were in my coat pocket. But you spent an hour looking for them, because you told me you'd seen them on the counter." "You were wrong, Doctor." Harrison made a note. "Any changes in mood? Depression? Anxiety? Unusual thoughts?" "Define unusual," I said, and Mitchell actually laughed, a nervous, apologetic sound. "She's been more anxious lately," Mitchell told the doctor, as if I wasn't sitting right there. "Suspicious. She accused Brenda of stealing her jewelry last month." "I didn't accuse anyone." I asked if Brenda had seen my mother's ring because it wasn't where I left it. "I found it later, in my jewelry box, where it belonged." More notes. More concerned looks between my son and this doctor who didn't know me. They ran cognitive tests. "Remember these words. Draw this clock. Count backwards from 100. I passed them all, but I saw how Mitchell's face fell slightly when I did. Saw the flicker of disappointment. And something cold settled in my stomach. He wanted me to fail. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Mitchell's face, about Brenda's phone calls, about Derek's careful questions. I thought about the house, about the life insurance money from Gerald that I'd saved, about the retirement account I never touched. I got up at 3 in the morning and went to my filing cabinet. Everything was there: deed, insurance papers, bank statements. But something felt wrong. Things were slightly out of order, as if someone had looked through them and put them back imperfectly. I started checking dates. My bank statements went back years, filed chronologically. Except 3 were missing. 3 statements from the last 6 months. I logged into my bank account online, something Derek had helped me set up years ago. Thank God. The statements were there digitally, but seeing them made my blood run cold. There were transfers I didn't recognize. Small ones, $200 here, $300 there, from my savings to my checking. Then larger payments from my checking account to a lawyer's office I'd never heard of, to something called Elder Care Consultants, to Meadowbrook Estates. Someone was spending my money. Someone who had access to my accounts. I sat at my kitchen table as the sun came up, and I felt something I hadn't felt since Gerald died. Absolutely alone. I called my own lawyer the next day. Janet Reed had handled our will years ago, and I trusted her. "Janet, I need to know something. If someone wanted to have me declared incompetent, What would they need? There was a pause. Elaine, why are you asking me this? Just tell me. She sighed. They'd need medical documentation, a doctor's assessment showing cognitive decline, and they'd need to petition the court. It's not easy, but if they can demonstrate you're a danger to yourself or are unable to manage your affairs. Has something happened? I told her everything. The doctor's visit, the missing statements, the transfers. Jesus, Elaine. Janet was quiet for a moment. Listen to me carefully. Check your will. Check everything. And don't let anyone know you're suspicious. Not yet. Why not? Because if they're really doing this, confronting them will just make them move faster. We need to be smart about this. My will was in my safe deposit box at the bank. I'd updated it after Gerald died, leaving everything split evenly between Mitchell and Derek. The house, the money, everything that IT seemed fair at the time. I went to the bank that afternoon, hands shaking as I opened the box. The will was there, but it had been replaced with a newer one, dated 3 months ago, signed with my signature, a signature that looked like mine but wasn't quite right. The letters slightly off. This new will left everything to Mitchell. Derek got $10,000 and personal effects, everything else the house. The savings, Gerald's life insurance went to my oldest son. I stood in that little bank cubicle, staring at a forged signature, and something broke loose inside me. Not sadness, rage. Pure, clarifying rage. I spent the next 2 weeks gathering evidence. I screenshotted everything, printed bank statements, documented every strange conversation. I set up a camera in my living room, just a little nanny cam I bought online, and caught Brenda letting herself in with a key I never gave her. Going through my mail, photographing documents, I recorded Mitchell on my phone, using the voice memo app, when he came over for what he called a serious talk. Mom, we need to discuss your options, he said, sitting on Gerald's favorite chair like he already owned it. Dr. Harrison thinks you should have more support. We've been touring facilities without asking me. We didn't want to upset you unnecessarily, but Meadowbrook has an opening. It's a beautiful place, Mom. You'd have your own room, people your age, activities. I have activities here. You'd be safe. I am safe. His face hardened. You're not thinking clearly. The doctor said. The doctor spent 20 minutes with me, and you're exhibiting signs of paranoia and cognitive decline. We're trying to help you, but you're making this difficult. Difficult for whom? He stood up, and for just a moment, I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Something cold. This house is too much. The property taxes alone are killing you. I pay my taxes. With what? Your savings are almost gone because someone's been stealing from me. The words hung there. Mitchell's face went very still. That's exactly what I'm talking about, he said quietly. These paranoid delusions. Mom, no one is stealing from you. We're trying to protect you. Get out of my house. Mom, get out. He left, but not before saying, we're not giving up on you. Even if you've given up on yourself. The court hearing was scheduled for a Thursday in November. Mitchell had filed a petition for guardianship, citing my deteriorating mental state and inability to manage my affairs. He had Dr. Harrison's assessment, statements from Brenda about my paranoid accusations, and documentation of my financial mismanagement. What he didn't have was the truth. Janet brought everything to court. The forged will, the bank transfers to Mitchell's personal account because of course he'd been stupid enough to use his own account. The footage of Brenda breaking into my house. The recording of Mitchell admitting he thought the house was killing me financially, revealing his real concern wasn't my safety but his inheritance. I sat in that courtroom, watching my son's face as Janet presented each piece of evidence. I watched him realize he'd been caught. Watched Brenda go pale. Watched their lawyer try to object, scramble, argue that I'd clearly given Mitchell financial power of attorney except I hadn't. And there was no legal documentation saying I had. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Patricia Morrison. She looked at Mitchell like he was something that had crawled out from under a rock. Mr. Brennan, she said, her voice cold and precise. You've attempted to defraud your mother, forge legal documents, and have her falsely committed to a care facility to gain access to her assets. Do you understand that these are criminal offenses? Mitchell opened his mouth, closed it. His lawyer whispered something to him. I was trying to protect her, he finally said, and he almost sounded like he believed it. By stealing from her? He had no answer. Judge Morrison dismissed the petition. She also referred the case to the district attorney for potential fraud charges. And she looked at me with something like sorrow. Mrs. Brennan, I'm sorry you've had to endure this. Your competency is clearly not in question. I'm issuing a restraining order preventing your son from contacting you or accessing your property. If you need additional legal protection, I do, I said. I want to press charges. Mitchell called me once after that, from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, Mom, his voice said, and he sounded tired, defeated. I'm sorry. I thought I was helping. The house is so much, and you're alone. And I don't know what I thought. I'm sorry. But he wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was sorry he'd been caught. I deleted the message. Derek flew down from Seattle 2 days after the hearing. He stood on my porch, tears streaming down his face, and said, I didn't know. Mom, I swear to God, I didn't know what Mitchell was doing. I wanted to believe him. I looked at his face, my baby, my quiet son, and tried to find the lie. He told me you were getting confused, Derek said. He showed me the doctor's report. I thought we were helping you. I thought Meadowbrook was your idea, that you'd agreed to tour it. He said you were on board with everything, that you just needed time to adjust, and you didn't think to ask me directly. I did. I called you and asked if I was taking my medication, not if I wanted to be institutionalized. He sat down on the porch steps, put his head in his hands. I was afraid of losing you, of watching you forget who I was, like Grandma did with the Alzheimer's. Mitchell said we had to act fast, before it got worse. He had the medical documents, the legal stuff. I trusted him. He's your brother. He's also a liar and a thief. Derek looked up at me, and his face was raw with grief. I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have questioned everything. I should have protected you. Instead, I just went along with it. I sat down next to him, both of us on the porch Gerald built. The November air was cold and clean. You're not like him, I said finally. You never were. How do you forgive something like this? I don't know yet. Ask me next year. Mitchell was charged with attempted fraud and forgery. He took a plea deal, 2 years probation, restitution, community service. No jail time, because the system is softer on white-collar crime, especially when it's framed as a family dispute. His law practice suffered. Brenda left him 6 months later, took their daughter, moved to California. Last I heard, he was living in a small apartment in Bend, working as a public defender. I feel nothing about that. Not satisfaction, not pity. Nothing. Derek visits every other month now. We're rebuilding something slowly, carefully. He brings Simone and their kids, and we make dinner together in my kitchen. His youngest daughter, Leela, likes to help me in the garden. She's 8, and she reminds me of Derek at that age, quiet, thoughtful, gentle with growing things. Grandma, she asked me once, while we were planting bulbs for spring, why doesn't Uncle Mitchell ever come here? Because sometimes people make choices that hurt the people they love, I said. And sometimes the hurt is too big to fix. That's sad. Yes, baby, it is. I'm 71 years old, and I live alone in a house that's worth more than $1 million. I pay my taxes. I maintain my garden. I volunteer at the library on Tuesdays. I have coffee with Janet once a week, and we talk about books and grandchildren and the ways the world is changing. I'm not lonely. I'm not confused. I'm not paranoid. I'm free. People ask me sometimes if I'm angry at Mitchell. They want me to be forgiving, to say something wise about grace and family. But the truth is harder and less pretty than that. I'm not angry. Anger is something you feel for someone who's still in your life, someone who matters enough to make your blood hot. Mitchell is a stranger who shares my DNA, a person I used to love who became someone I don't recognize. What I feel is loss. I lost my son years before he tried to steal my house. I lost him to ambition, to greed, to a version of success that looked shiny from the outside but was hollow at its core. He looked at me and saw money. He looked at his inheritance and couldn't wait for me to die. So he tried to bury me alive instead, That's the truth they hid for decades. The one I revealed in court, that my son didn't see me as a person anymore. I was just an obstacle between him and what he believed he deserved. The house is still too big for one person. The stairs are getting harder. The garden takes longer to weed. But it's mine. Gerald is here, in every floorboard and window frame. My memories are here, both boys as children, running through sprinklers, learning to ride bikes, bringing home report cards and girlfriends, and eventually lives of their own. I'll leave it when I'm ready. On my terms. To Derek, probably. Or maybe to Leela when she's older. Or maybe I'll sell it and donate the money to the library. Leave nothing for anyone to fight over. But right now, on this November evening, with the sun setting gold and orange over the trees Gerald and I planted 40 years ago, I'm sitting on my porch with a cup of tea and a book. And I'm exactly where I belong, safe. Not in the way they meant it, locked away and managed and controlled. Safe in the way that matters. Free, competent, and finally, blessedly done with proving my worth to people who couldn't see it. That's enough. That has to be enough. And most days, it is.